The use of voice generation software for the production of this YouTube channel is a safety measure taken as a result of spiritual advice received, and is not a stylistic choice. Welcome to the Dark List. The stories from the other side of the razor. Tonight's story concerns a small group of people who, if their claims are to be believed, have offered some of the most compelling evidence for the paranormal ever recorded. On the other hand, if the skeptics are correct, tonight's story is about one of the most elaborate deceptions in modern history, a story of manipulation and intrigue that has divided opinion for years. Because if their claims are false, then this group endured years of difficult, uncomfortable conditions with no clear benefit to themselves for reasons no skeptic has yet explained. But if their claims are to be believed, well, then this could be a story that you wish weren't true. Tonight, the Dark List presents the Scole Experiment. In the small Norfolk village of Scole, a farmhouse cellar became the stage for one of the most unusual and controversial series of seances of the 20th century. Between 1993 and 1998, 4 people gathered there week after week. Their claim was extraordinary, that they had made contact with the dead, and that physical proof of that contact could be seen, heard, and touched. The hosts were Robin and Sandra Foy, longtime spiritualists. Their partners in the experiment were Alan and Diana Bennett, a husband and wife team who acted as mediums. Together, they became known as the Scole Group. Their sessions took place in the cellar of the Foy's farmhouse, a dark, cold room, sparsely furnished with a table and chairs. It was here that, they said, the impossible happened. Lights flickered in mid-air, orbs darted through the darkness, objects appeared from nowhere, sealed film rolls, placed in locked containers by investigators, emerged marked with mysterious images and symbols. Figures and hands materialized, touching sitters, and voices were heard in the air, speaking in tones that no one in the group claimed as their own. For 5 years, this continued, and eventually word spread beyond the spiritualist community. The Society for Psychical Research, the oldest organization in the world devoted to investigating claims of the paranormal, sent 3 respected investigators, Montague Keene, Professor Arthur Ellison, and psychologist David Fontana. They attended sessions and later wrote an official report. Their conclusion was blunt. What they had witnessed could not be explained by normal means. That is the claim. The skeptical explanation is simple in outline. A group of spiritualists in a dark cellar, producing strange lights, noises, and apparitions. The darkness itself makes trickery possible. The mediums refuse to allow infrared cameras, claiming they disrupt the phenomena. Without light, without recording, without strict controls, any illusion could be staged. But let us test that hypothesis. Fraud requires motive. What was theirs? No money was made, no ticket sales, no tours or television contracts, not even a book at the time. Only years later did Robin Foy publish his account, and any royalties from that single volume would be modest. Fraud also requires benefit. What did the group gain? 5 years of cold evenings in a farmhouse cellar is hardly a glamorous way to spend time. If prestige within the spiritualist community was the goal, it could have been achieved far more easily by staged public demonstrations, not by closed sittings that invited scrutiny from academics. Fraud requires consistency. Could 4 people over half a decade maintain a deception of this scale without error, without contradiction, even under the gaze of visiting scientists? Could they conjure lights, produce objects, manipulate sealed film, and move tables convincingly in total darkness without once being exposed? Such a deception would require not just skill, but unbroken discipline for years on end, with no reward but suspicion. The fraud hypothesis, when inspected closely, grows heavier and more unwieldy than it first appeared. It explains the darkness, but not the perseverance. It explains the possibility, but not the motive. The alternative is straightforward. The Scole group described what they saw. Robin and Sandra Foy, Alan and Diana Bennett, and the many visitors to those sessions all witnessed phenomena that, to them, were real. The SPR investigators reported small lights moving freely in the cellar. They described objects materializing. They examined sealed film containers before and after, and found images and writings impressed upon the rolls inside. They left convinced that what they had seen was not trickery. Other independent visitors attended. Some were scientists, others writers, researchers, or interested observers. They came away reporting the same events. Lights, apports, film images, materialized hands. The consistency of testimony across multiple witnesses and over hundreds of sittings is striking. And unlike the fraud hypothesis, this account requires no elaborate conspiracy, no irrational investment of time with no return. It asks us only to accept that witnesses told the truth about what they experienced. The simplest explanation, it is said, is usually correct. Strange events are usually fraud or error or wishful thinking. But in Scole, what is simple? One possibility is that 4 people conspired for 5 years to maintain a profitless hoax, fooling each other, fooling their visitors, fooling professional investigators, all in a cold cellar, with nothing to show for it but suspicion and, years later, a modest book. The other possibility is that they told the truth, that what they described happening, happened, and that others who came to see it, including those trained to doubt, saw the same. Between those two, the second is the simpler. Fraud is possible, but the fraud story is weighed down with difficulties, the absence of motive, the absence of reward, the sheer endurance required. Testimony, in contrast, is consistent, straightforward, and human. People described what they saw. The Scole Experiment leaves us with a choice. Either ordinary men and women chose to dedicate half a decade to an elaborate charade that enriched no one and risked everything. Or they opened a door onto something we do not understand. Fraud is always the safer conclusion. But when fraud becomes the more convoluted story, when its demands outweigh its plausibility, Occam's razor points the other way. The weight of this case does not prove life after death, but it shows that when human motives are measured, the hoax hypothesis collapses under its own burden. And what remains, uncomfortable though it may be, is the possibility that the witnesses of Scole spoke the truth. So, there you have it. Another entry on the dark list. Another story from the other side of the razor. I've been told to mention that you should like, and also subscribe. And remember, sleeping with the lights on won't save you.